Good evening. Welcome to the Big Story. I'm Regina Lay.
And I'm Shawn Yao.
Tonight's big stories: the CIDG chief files charges of inciting to sedition and unlawful utterances against Rodrigo Duterte for joking about killing 15 senators in a bomb blast.
The Philippines and China get caught up again in an exchange of words at a security conference in Munich, Germany, over, well, what else? Territorial claims in the South China Sea.
And Quezon City has declared an outbreak of dengue, with several other areas expected to follow suit as cases of the viral infection continue to rise by the day.
Former President Rodrigo Duterte joking about killing 15 senators to make way for his chosen candidates isn't funny, at least not to President Marcos. Marcos blasted him over the weekend at no less than Davao del Norte, Duterte's bailiwick.
In addition to that, well, Davao's former top cop and now CIDG Director, Brigadier General Nicolas Torre, has filed criminal complaints against Tigong for that remark. That's on top of a suggestion from some congressmen to have the NBI go ahead and investigate Duterte.
In response, former Duterte spokesman Attorney Sal Panelo called Torre a tower of ignorance. Maricel Halili has tonight's big story.
Patayin natin yung mga senador ngayon para mabakante. Kung makapatay tayo ng mga 15 na senador, pasok na tayo lahat.
For his political supporters and sympathizers, Duterte's remarks during PDP-Laban's proclamation rally in San Juan last week was obviously a hyperbole. That's just his style, they say, his way of talking. He jokes about everything, they insist. But critics say Duterte joking about killing 15 senators in a bomb blast to make room in the upper chamber for his candidates is taking it too far. President Bongbong Marcos, for one, did not find his predecessor's remark funny at all. At the Alyansa para sa Bagong Pilipinas' campaign sortie in Davao del Norte over the weekend, the chief executive did not hold back and did not spare the sarcasm.
Siguro, kanina wala silang pag-asa, kaya papatay na lang sila ng 15 na senador. Ay talaga, sabagay, mahirap naman yung ibang tao. Ang iniisip lang nila, ang kaisa-isang solusyon sa lahat ng problema ay pumatay pa ng Pilipino. Ngunit, maintindihan mo rin. Dahil kung ako nga ay nasa kabilang partido at itong mga ito ang kaharap natin, ay bako, mahihirap sasabihin ko, mahirap na kampanya ito dahil mabigat ang kalaman.
Leaders of progressive groups also slammed Tigong.
Ginagawa niyang mainstream ang kabastusan at hindi ginagawa niyang mainstream ang patayan. Siya ang pinakamasahol na naging presidente. Siya ang presidente na sinira na talaga hindi lang ang lipunang Pilipino, kundi ang values ng mga Pilipino. Dapat siyang purgahin sa ating kasaysayan.
House Assistant Majority Leader Zia Alonto Adjong is now calling on the NBI to investigate Tigong's inappropriate joke.
It should concern all of us because hindi dapat man normalize yung salita na patayin. Pag sinasabi na joke, when will it end? We don't know which one is joke and which one is not. So I think we have to be more circumspect about how we say things out in the public.
But it looks like the NBI is not inclined to conduct such a probe, something that some congressmen find as premature dismissal.
I don't think na hanggang ngayon kakagatin pa rin ng mga mamamayan yung kanyang mga panawagan na patayan na lang ng patayan. Wala lang imbestigahan at nakita naman rhetorics lang yun na palamuti ng kanyang kampanya. Kitang-kita naman na joke niya lang yun.
Do we allow this kind of rhetorics in the first place? Do we actually normalize this kind of talks? I don't know how the NBI director sees it, but we are not instigating. We are merely trying to convey a message.
I think it shouldn't be dismissed so early. I think personally we respect, of course, the good NBI director. Pero this is coming from someone who has admitted to previously killing before.
Justice Secretary Boying Remulla says the NBI can conduct a motu proprio investigation. But he suggests that senators who felt threatened by Duterte's words should take the initiative to file a complaint.
Alam niyo naman, sometimes we're used to the language of the former president.
Yes, sir.
Sanay tayo. Hindi naman lahat ng sinasabi niya, tatalon tayo.
Yes, sir.
Diba? Pero if the senators themselves complain, then we have reason to act on the matter. Kasi siyempre sila yung sila yung endangered ng ganong statements. It can possibly have a ripple effect.
But someone did file a complaint and a criminal case at that. PNP CIDG Director Brigadier General Nicolas Torre sued Duterte on Monday for inciting to sedition and unlawful utterance. Torre was the top cop of Davao and led the arrest of embattled religious leader Apollo Kibuloy last year.
Hindi malayo na gayahin or he will be taken he will be taken seriously by his blind supporters. Alam nyo, bagong Pilipinas na eh. Hindi na pwede yung ganong mga statements na kinaumagahan, joke only na lang.
In a statement in response, former Chief Legal Counsel and spokesman to Mr. Duterte Sal Panelo called Torre a tower of ignorance and an edifice of nonsense for filing what he called was a ludicrous case that lacks basis. Panelo added that none among the senators Duterte alluded to has said anything about the threat on their lives. And that unlike Torre, these lawmakers have the common sense and humor to see that Duterte was just making an amusing and laughable remark. For News 5, Maricel Halili, We Are One News.
Tomorrow, the House Committees on Public Order and Safety, Information and Communications Technology, and Public Information are set to launch its second hearing on fake news. This time around, they are going to focus on the tax compliance and financial transparency of social media influencers and vloggers. Aside from online personalities, the Tri-Committee also invited officials of the BIR and executives from Meta, Google, and TikTok owner ByteDance. They have also invited representatives from the Anti-Money Laundering Council. The panel is weighing potential policy responses to digital misinformation, including stricter accountability measures for social media influencers and improved regulation of online content. Tricom overall chairman, Representative Dan Fernandez, reiterated that the probe is not meant to suppress anybody's right to free speech. They have, however, issued a show cause orders to a number of social media personalities who failed to appear at the first hearing on February 4. Among the most prominent ones who were issued as COs are Attorney Glenn Chong, former Press Secretary Trixie Cruz Angeles, Grisette Laureta Chu, Sas Rogando Sasot, Mark Anthony Lopez, Lorraine Badoy, Jeffrey Celes, and Mary Catherine Binag. The Tri-Committee says several individuals have responded via email, including Cruz Angeles, Cruz, and Lopez, among others.
All right, let's discuss this further with our first guest tonight. We have with us Congressman Ace Barbers, House Quad Committee Chair, and Surigao del Norte Representative. He joins us on the line. Good evening, Congressman Barbers. Welcome back to The Big Story. Can you hear me okay?
Good evening, ladies. Good evening to all our televiewers and magandang gabi po sa ating mga kababayan.
Thanks for making time for us again. Lots of things to talk to you about. Let's begin with the Tri-Committee hearing tomorrow. This is the second on disinformation and fake news. First of all, you've issued show cause orders to a number of the social media personalities, longer than the one that we read. The one we read were just some of the most prominent ones. But how many are we expecting tomorrow in person to turn up?
Well, for those people that we invited in the first hearing who failed to attend, were the subject of our show cause orders, and hopefully they will appear tomorrow. But other than those that did not appear last time, we also have another batch of vloggers that we likewise invited. And this invitation does not actually pinpoint anyone. It's just that we invited those who are prominent vloggers in the social media. So for those who are saying that we picked only, or we invited only those that are pro Duterte, that is not true because we invited practically all that we see who are very active online and those who have gained a large sector of our society as their followers. So that is the basis of the invitation.
So in short, you don't know yet how many are going to turn up tomorrow. Hindi pa po kayo sigurado?
No, we're not sure yet. But we sent out invitations. The committee secretariat has probably sent out 50 to 50 names. No, I'm not really aware of how much invitations or how many vloggers were invited. But those that were issued a show cause order should appear. Otherwise, the committee must or should or will be compelled not to take action on the failure of them to honor the show cause orders.
What does that mean, take action? Like, how far are you willing to go?
Well, under our rules, if you fail to appear before a committee after an invitation was sent to you twice, then a show cause order will be issued. If the show cause order will not be honored, then upon a motion of a member of the committee, he can move for the committee to cite the person in contempt. And if the contempt order was issued, then there is a corresponding penalty to that. No? And the penalty is probably a detention. It depends, but it must get the support of the majority of the members present, constituting a quorum during that hearing.
Okay, just a quick look back on at the first hearing on February 4th. 37 out of the 40 invited did not attend. 13 of those part of the ones that didn't attend, they ran to the Supreme Court. I'm sure you're aware that happened, and I don't think the Supreme Court has yet ruled on anything right now. But of course, the bloggers are claiming that your plan is to curtail free speech, and these summons are, to curtail free speech. And of course, as a Tricom chairman, Dan Fernandez said that is not the case. This is just in aid of legislation and, to beef up the rules. When we took a look at the vloggers and influencers who didn't turn up, it would seem, though, Congressman Barbers, that a lot of them are really pro-Duterte vloggers, and a lot of the criticism is coming from there. Would you know if you expanded the invite list? And knowing also that there is this petition with the Supreme Court, are you not taking into consideration like maybe some leeway until they reply?
Well, number one, I believe that there were other resource persons that would be invited other than those that were invited during the first hearing and those who failed to attend. No? Because since there are several number of vloggers, we cannot invite them all at one time in one hearing. So that's why in the subsequent hearings of the committee, there will be people that will be invited. And I'm sure for tomorrow's hearing, other than those that were invited and were issued show cause orders, there are other names also that should appear and be present for tomorrow. Now, as far as the decision of the Supreme Court is concerned, of course, we will respect whatever decision the court will say. No? If it says that we cannot invite them anymore and issues a TRO, then we will honor and abide by that. So far, as we speak, there's no TRO yet being issued by the courts. Therefore, we will continue with our hearing for tomorrow and expect that those that were invited will appear. Now, third, I am surprised why they don't want to appear. In the first hearing, they probably saw what transpired in that committee hearing, and there was no act or there was no move from the committee to cite anyone in contempt and detain anyone, because no one has violated our rules, and we cannot do that discriminately by just citing them in contempt. There must be basis. There must be some violation of the rules. Or probably if they are caught lying and to the disadvantage of any of the member of the committee or the Congress itself, then they should be cited in contempt. But nakita naman natin in the last hearing, wala namang ganung nangyari. In fact, Yung iba nga dyan na hindi naman yung naka-attend, na hindi naman anti or pro uh, uh, DDS, and were also present and has given their contribution to the committee so that we will be able to craft a regulatory policy, because this is the objective of this committee.
You also invited the platforms, TikTok or ByteDance, Meta and Google. Have they RSVP'd? Are they going to show up? And what exactly is their presence there? What are you hoping to get from that? Are you hoping to get any promises?
I do hope that they appear, no? Because their platforms are the ones being used by those who peddle fake news. Ladies, let me just remind everybody that, especially those mga nanunood, no, na this is not an attempt to suppress anyone, no, from expressing their own opinion. Contrary to what these vloggers are saying. Sabi nila, suppression of free speech. Meron ba kaming sinuppress? Wala. Is there any attempt to do that? Wala. And they have a lawyer na kasama nila dyan as one of the vloggers. And dapat she should be the one explaining to her colleagues. Now, let's not be scared. Let's appear before this committee and propose and give our opinion and ideas on how to improve the use of all these social media platforms. Kasi, they cannot ignore the fact that since they are known influencers, they can influence people. No, in fact, some of them, because of the large number of followers that they have, can monetize whatever engagements that they have, no, in the social media platforms. So dapat makisama sila, tumulong sila sa gobyerno na magkaroon tayo ng regulatory policy. And mind you, the regulatory framework or policy that we will be proposing as a result of this committee hearing, no, hindi to bago, because other countries already have regulatory policy in the use, deployment, and employment of social media. So, anong kinakatakot nila? So, those na natatakot are probably guilty for peddling fake news. Do we want fake news to be peddled every single day in our social media platforms? Diba? To the disadvantage of the Filipino people, misinformation, disinformation, and malinformation. These are the very reason why there was a need to come up with a policy.
Well, Kong, speaking of monetizing their content, I know this is one of the topics that the committee plans to tackle tomorrow, the tax compliance of content creators. But I mean, let's face it, content creators, they're self-employed. Marami po sa kanila, di ba? And most of their income streams, iba-iba. They have ad revenue, they have sponsorships, there are also brand deals. How do you propose to address this, no, in terms of legislation, the complexities of just reporting their income and having diverse sources of income?
Well, I'm sure if they have other sources of revenue, they're probably withheld or probably they're paying taxes. But what we want to discover and find out are those monetizations that they do in their social media platforms. Because the Meta, ByteDance, and what's the other one? The other platform can inform the committee as to how much money that they have given to these bloggers, and we will ask, have you paid your taxes dito sa dito sa mga social media income that you make? They cannot just reason out that I have diverse and several sources of revenue. Yes, we know that because some of them are professionals, as they claim to be. No, and we want to find out if you are professional. Then we don't want the income that you get from other sources. What we are interested in is dito ba sa social media engagements mo where you can monetize in YouTube, Facebook yata nag-monetize siya, TikTok, di ba? Pwede bang sabihin mo sa amin how much revenues do you make? Kasi some of them, in order to increase their engagements and therefore be able to monetize, they will create news or contents that are not verified, contents that are not real, contents that are not true. So do we allow this to happen? Does Facebook do they have a mechanism to control this? So that's what we want to find out.
But I guess that's why you're being accused of having an agenda, Congressman Barbers, because, I mean, what has tax compliance got to do with disinformation, right? Are you investigating disinformation and the spread of fake news, or are you investigating the monetization of these online influencers? You've gone so far as to invite the Anti-Money Laundering Council, the BIR tomorrow, and so on and so forth. So, you know, there's a bit of a disconnect there for me, because what are we exactly investigating here?
Okay, I'll say it again, just like what I said earlier. Now, there are engagements which these vloggers can monetize, correct? Now, if these engagements that they do monetize are contents that are not real, that are not verified, that are not true, and yet gather a significant amount of views or likes or shares, then they can monetize them, right? Now, ang tanong, these engagements ba that they can, or these contents that they create, no, that gathers, what they call this, certain number of views and likes, no, but was not verified. What do we do about that? What do we do about that? The only way to look at it is maybe find out. Oh, teka, why are you making so much money? Are you paying your taxes? Anyone who makes income should pay taxes. Diba? I'm sure you guys, when you are paid by your network, taxes are withheld. Now, sila, papayag ba tayo na hindi sila magbabayad ng buwis? Considering that they make, some of them even make hundreds and thousands of pesos in their income in the monetization. So that's part of the policy that we want to create. It's not just the peddling of fake news, diba? So don't get it wrong into believing that it's just about fake news. Of course, fake news is the most important part here, but more than that is the total policy we wish to implement, just like what other countries are doing.
So in short, you are also looking at potential legislation around tax compliance for online influencers and social media personalities.
Oh yes, definitely. Some of the online sellers probably make 5 million pesos a day, as one of the online blogger said in one of her posts, or one of her, what do you call that, whatever you call that. She claimed to have made, 3 million pesos a day. Question, did you pay your taxes?
Congressman Barbers, a lot of critics of this hearing, because nga they feel na this is a curtailment of the right to free speech that everyone has. A lot of critics are saying meron namang cyber libel, and we have seen time and again that cyber libel has been wielded against certain purveyors of fake news o yung mga mapanira news ng ibang tao. Hindi ba sapat yung cyber libel law natin?
Well, sapat yun, sapat yun. Pero sa paggamit isang area kung saan kumakalat ang fake news, dapat bang meron tayong pulisiya dyan? Sa aking paniwala, siguro dapat. Because gaya nga ng binanggit ko kanina, the other countries are doing that. It's just that us, probably, we're the biggest user of social media in the whole of Asia and probably in the world. Diba? Number one. Number two, siguro dapat tingnan din natin yung hindi lang yung purveyor sila ng fake news eh. I'm not saying everybody's a purveyor of fake news, but there are bloggers that actually are purveyors of fake news, those that incite people to withdraw their support from the government. Ito ba, tama ba to? Di ba? Kapag nakakita ka ng vlogger na araw-araw na ginawa ng Diyos ay walang ginagawa kundi magmura, murahin si Juan de la Cruz, murahin si ganyan, di ba? Di ba? That's their right. Maaaring pinalaki sa mura yung taong yon. Pero gusto ba natin nakikita ng mga bata yan? We all know that we cannot even control kung sino yung nakakita o nakaka-access sa Facebook. My nephews, my nieces, my children can access news from the social media platforms. And that is why we want to regulate that. It's not just me. A lot of parents are complaining. And they wanted to ask, what can government do, no, to stop this one purveyors of fake news? Everybody now, even probably all of you ladies, you're probably asking, if you read something in social media, you're probably asking, totoo ba ito? Ano ba totoo ngayon? Hindi na, naguguluhan na tayo kung ano yung totoo. There are disinformation, misinformation, and malinformation.
Right.
And
I mean,
do you want the influencers to earn from spreading fake news and misleading information to the people? Do we want them to earn money because of that?
well, that responsibility and that question really lies with the social media platforms because they've become the gatekeepers, right? But Congressman, what we'll do is we'll
on the contrary, they said they can only do so much. That's what that's what the platforms are saying.
I mean, because I disagree because they, they have full control of the algorithms. They arbitrate on things like, if you're buying an ad, they can
absolutely
allow
agree
it.
with
They
you.
don't allow it. It's the power is in their hands, so they are the arbiter here.
Yeah, I know. I absolutely agree with you. That's what I believe. That's what I believe too. No, and they can control. They can take down anything. But did you see what's happening now? Did they do something about that?
Yeah, that's also the debate in the U.S., unfortunately. But
Exactly.
yeah,
And that's exactly what we want to happen. We want to elevate this into a level of discourse that we should all agree that there must be some policy.
Right.
Di ba? We're not curtailing. Alam mo, kagaya niyan, those vloggers that did not attend, what did they do? They started talking about our invitation sa Tricom and say that, we wanted to curtail the freedom of speech,
Unconstitutional daw.
abridging, no law will be passed, abridging the freedom of speech. Look, meron ba kaming ganun? Wala naman kaming ganun. Kaya nga nagtatanong tayo sa kanila, hey, come on, give us some idea on how to improve the use of social media. There must be a code of conduct. There must be code of ethics, just like you guys. Diba? Meron kayong code of conduct. And kagaya, let's say, kayong totoong journalist, are you allowed to do the same in the mainstream media? Before you come up with news, ang daming verification, di ba?
Yeah.
Because you're afraid that when you report a news that is not verified, baka mapahamak yung network o hindi kaya yung nag-report, di ba? So, are we saying that the vloggers are special, not to be governed by a code of conduct or code of ethics? This is what we want to come up with.
Kong, I'm just curious. You mentioned several times that other countries are doing the same thing. So I was just wondering, before the first hearing and even before the second hearing tomorrow, which countries' models are you kind of studying para ma-adapt natin? May ganun ba?
Well, yeah, siguro titingnan natin ano yung mga best practices tungkol dyan, no? I think like Germany, no? Yung Germany, yung president ng Germany issued a very strong statement about the use of social media. May sinabi niya na we cannot allow social media to destroy democracy or our democracy. Coming up with that kind of a statement is something else, no? And yun ang gusto nating mangyari. It's not because we're siding with siding with a politician. No, this is for the next generations. Now, if they want to side and express their opinion, expressing their support to a certain candidate, that's fine. If they want to criticize me, kunyari, no, or criticize anyone, that's fine. Okay lang yun. Pero make sure that you have a basis, di ba?
Right.
If that is your opinion, that's fine. Di ba? Okay lang yun. Huwag ka lang mag-create o magpapakalat ng fake news because fake news peddling is different from expressing your opinion. Kaya nga meron tayong mga batas that if you go overboard, you will be liable under our law.
Yeah, the problem the problem with the content regulation, Kong, is that there's a very fine line between that and censorship, right? And I don't think any country in the world has figured it out just yet. Not even the United States, which is extremely polarized at the moment because of what's going on.
Yeah, but there should be a distinct line or difference between issuing a statement expressing your opinion and expressing a defamatory statement. That is not rocket science. You know, if it's defamatory, if it is issued with malice, that's something else. Kaya nga meron tayong mga batas dyan.
Kong, sorry, what we'll do is we'll keep monitoring the second hearing tomorrow. But before we let you go, just very quickly, I have to ask you this. We haven't spoken to you since the impeachment. I believe you signed the impeachment complaint as well. What are your thoughts on that, on how it's progressing? And, of course, this is the context being you were once seen as a Duterte ally and was once seen as a close friend of the vice president. So what are you thinking about all of this?
I don't think that matters, no? What is the issue at hand is different from where I was aligned with politically. I don't think it's not even logical to bring it up. But just to answer your query, we're waiting for the Senate, to start the proceedings because 241 215 plus 25 or 29, if I'm not mistaken, has also signed, and signified their interest in finding out what is the real score in this issue of impeachment against the vice president.
It wasn't.
So yeah, we're all waiting.
It wasn't difficult for you to sign.
No, you know very well that I was investigating. I was the lead chair of the Quad Committee and a active participant of the Senate of the Committee on Good Government. And there are issues there that needs to be addressed. There were evidences, documentary and testimonial present that was used as basis for, in my opinion, in my signing of the impeachment.
Okay.
So why would it be that difficult?
Okay. We're going to have to leave that there for now. Thank you so much for your insights and answers. We'll continue monitoring the hearing tomorrow. That was Congressman Ace Barbers.
We're going to take a quick break, but coming up, what started out as a panel discussion in Germany turns into a verbal match between Beijing and Manila's foreign ministers. We have the details of that in just a bit. Stay tuned only here to One News.
Welcome back. You are watching the Big Story here on One News.
A heated exchange between the Philippines and China at the 61st Munich Security Conference is making headlines abroad. It happened during the panel titled Making Waves, Maritime Tensions in the Indo-Pacific. Department of Foreign Affairs Secretary Enrique Manalo defended the Philippines' action in the South China Sea by saying that the basic issue here is that we are following international law. Wherever the Philippines undertakes any kind of activity within our exclusive economic zone as defined by UNCLOS, we feel we are within our rights. But when another country, let's say, applies its own domestic laws to certain areas within our EEZ, then it really does create the kind of tension that we have been experiencing, especially over the last 2 years. He also said that countries who signed agreements like the UNCLOS should abide by it. China is a signatory, though Manalo did not explicitly name them. His remarks didn't sit well with Chinese former Vice Minister of Foreign Affairs Fu Ying, who argued that the Philippines' occupation of Ayungin Shoal and Escoda Shoal violated the 2002 Declaration of Conduct in the South China Sea. Fu insisted that the document's language, especially the part where it says not to make more moves, was watered down upon Manila's request. We don't have access to the clip of Fu Ying challenging Manalo, but during the Q&A, the Philippine Foreign Minister also had to field off combative questions from Chinese participants.
My question today is, according to the 1898 Treaty of Paris, the Philippines' western maritime boundary is defined by 118 degrees east longitude, and both Wang Yentao and Renai Zhao lie outside this boundary. So how can the Philippines designate these features as part of its territory in the Maritime Zones Act passed last November? If the Philippines truly considers Renai Zhao its territory, why did it choose to ground a military ship there in 1999 rather than openly deploying military forces? He did not respond to my question.
On the sidelines of the Munich conference, Secretary Manalo also met with U.S. Secretary of State Marco Rubio in person for the first time. In a statement on X, Rubio said they discussed, quote, how to strengthen the U.S.-Philippine alliance to address China's destabilizing actions in the South China Sea and increase the economic prosperity of our citizens. The State Department also later said the two discussed cooperation on infrastructure, critical minerals, IT, and energy, including civil nuclear cooperation. Meanwhile, the Philippine Army says it will expand this year's Katex Katihan exercises to Visayas and Mindanao. Katex stands for Combined Arms Exercise, and this year's iteration, involving 6,000 troops, will take place from March 3 to 12. Army Chief Lieutenant General Roy Galido says the inclusion of training venues in Visayas and Mindanao, Bukidnon, and Capiz, to be precise, will test their combat readiness. He also confirmed they will be acquiring a short-range air defense system as part of an overall strategy to build up the country's self-defense capability. Galido also admitted they're interested in buying the US's Typhoon missile system, which is mid-range, but cost is an issue.
We are rehearsing how the Army should be performing its role in territorial defense, which, as we have mentioned, has never been done before because we are focused on internal security. We do need all of this and we want all of this. However, we are always hindered by the financial capability.
All right, let's discuss this further with our second guest tonight. We've got Don McLean-Gill. He's a geopolitical analyst and a lecturer at the Department of International Studies at De La Salle University. Good evening, Don. Good to see you again. Welcome back to The Big Story.
Good evening. Thank you so much for having me. And like always, it's a true pleasure to talk to all of you on this.
Happy to have you on board again. Let's begin with the Munich conference, 61st Munich Security Conference. We didn't have the clips to run of that exchange between Secretary Manalo and the former Vice Foreign Minister of China, but I'm sure you've read all about it. And also, so what did you think of that? And also, what was your big takeaway from this year's Munich conference?
Right. So this is a common trick in Beijing's overarching playbook to exploit and redirect the focus in international conferences, particularly to mainstream its position, its propaganda, regardless of any factual basis, right? So when it came to the discussion points, Secretary Manalo's points were clear and undeniable, especially when citing the Philippines' rules-based actions and its position in the West Philippine Sea. However, as an expansionist power, China can't digest these statements. But unfortunately, despite the Global Times, for instance, roaring about how the Chinese representative was able to make powerful points against the Philippines, for instance, the Chinese representative, what argued mainly on the preservation of the 2002 Declaration on the Conduct of Parties, for instance, has probably forgotten that China has openly violated and continues to openly violate several provisions of the declaration. So let's talk a little bit about a few principles. The adherence to UNCLOS is one of the most important tenets of the declaration, and to ensure that you don't do any activities that undermine UNCLOS. 7 years after the declaration, China submitted its 9-line map to the United Nations, a clear discreditation of UNCLOS and international law, and after which China began incorporating its illegal Coast Guard laws, and also recently as well, to again undermine international law. What the Philippines is doing, on the other hand, is to cement our position based on international law. The Maritime Zones Law, which was signed by President Marcos Jr., reiterates that the Philippines' claims surrounding the West Philippine Sea are in line with UNCLOS and the 2016 Arbitral Award, both of which are binding. So there are several other examples which I could talk about, but perhaps we could get the discussion going as well.
Okay. Don, I'm not sure if you actually caught the back and forth between Fu Ying and Enrique Manalo, but more overall, were you shocked by the scuffle that ensued, or was this like something that you expected was actually possible?
Well, we've seen these attempts by Chinese representatives to disrupt or at least to provoke any statements that come out of the Philippines' lawful position. We've seen something similar, for instance, during President Marcos Jr.'s speech at the Shangri-La Dialogue, where there was a Chinese representative who sought to provoke the situation and, of course, Philippine interests. So when we look at all these past experiences that the Chinese representatives have been doing in international conferences, particularly in line with security, this really doesn't come as a shock. But really, this actually highlights how their propaganda is not really being taken seriously by several countries in the international system. And as Secretary Manalo has rightfully said, there's no other country that therefore, disagrees with the Philippines' position. And in fact, we see even our immediate neighbors in Southeast Asia, and of course, our expanded neighborhood as well, all support the Philippines' rules-based position. So I think it is clear as to who has the upper hand when it comes to the legitimacy and the objectivity of the arguments. But then again, this is to disrupt, this is to provoke, and this has been going on for a long time, especially when it comes to security conferences that really go against China's expansionist ambitions.
I take it you think that U.S. State Secretary Marco Rubio meeting Secretary Manalo on the sidelines of it is a good sign. The State Department said that the two reiterated their commitment to mutual cooperation and also enhanced ties in areas like not just the maritime dispute, but to do as well with infrastructure, nuclear energy, and so on and so forth. On the other hand, you've got the $500 million in additional military aid that the U.S. committed last year that's still in limbo because of the freeze on all foreign aid and grants. How are you reading this space?
Well, I'm not too worried about the freeze, and I'm not too worried either about the overarching defense cooperation between the Philippines and the United States, even under a Trump 2.0. And if anything, it is in the interest of Washington to have a resilient and capable ally in the Western Pacific to forward its America First interests. And on the same time, we benefit from this level of capacity building as well. But what we need is to ensure that we have a proactive position when it comes to negotiating and directing our immediate security concerns within the overarching scheme of things when it comes to the U.S.'s strategy in the Indo-Pacific. So based on, of course, the initial Trump 1.0 declassified Indo-Pacific strategy towards the end of his term, there was a huge emphasis on the U.S.-China power competition and the need to encourage allies and partners to step forward. And from what we have seen in the past, the Philippines has been punching beyond its weight, above its weight level. And I think that this does not really send a negative message to the United States, but rather certifies that the Philippines is not only willing to do what it can and harmonize national policies with external policies when it comes to defending what is rightfully its own, but it's also willing to be an active stakeholder in the rules-based order of the Indo-Pacific. But of course, given our military and material limitations, partnerships are of great essence. And we are also diversifying. We continue to pursue proactive multi-alignment, working with countries like Canada, France, the United Kingdom, India, Japan, Australia. And it is not just us trying to ask for their help, but rather they also recognize the merits of working with a resident country that also adheres to the same interests and goals in keeping the maritime domain rules based. So it is, in fact, something where we could all benefit from one another, but this requires consistency at the policy level. And that is something that we need to ensure.
Go ahead, Pauline.
Well, Donna, since we're discussing geopolitics in the Indo-Pacific, I wanted to get your thoughts on a remark that a top U.S. military commander in the Indo-Pacific, Admiral Samuel Paparo, recently made. He did say in the Honolulu Defense Forum that China, Russia, and North Korea have formed a triangle of troublemakers. He spoke about an axis of autocracy. I just wanted to get your thoughts on that. How does this influence our strategic interests as well as the U.S. in the Indo-Pacific region?
Well, we have to say this plainly. There is no country in the international system that has the material capability and the political will other than China, to disrupt U.S. interests. So China is the only country in the Indo-Pacific with the capacity and the will to do so. And in fact, China's position also emboldens radical states such as North Korea and even Russia to be involved and to disrupt the security architecture of the Indo-Pacific. And we have seen an increase of this level of, as you'd like to say, the three-way engagement in certain degrees. So it has to be clear in Washington that the most pressing threat to U.S. national security is, in fact, China. And the need to address this proactively and not to be dissuaded by other parts of the region is crucial. And this is also crucial for us. And we also, it is also in our interest. So there are what we call restrainers in the Pentagon, for instance, to talk about relocating U.S. presence, military presence away from the Middle East, away from Europe. But there's also a growing representation in the Pentagon that say that we need to relocate this and focus it more on the Indo-Pacific, to address the China challenge. Because all these challenges are interconnected, with China being the most capable of all the challengers to U.S. national interests. And most importantly, China's approach is also acutely challenging to our position in the West Philippine Sea. And you talk about infrastructure, you talk about technology and all this, it is definitely the way to go. We need to solidify our position based on different industries. And of course, one of the most important one would be the recently passed self-reliance defense posture law, which should allow us to become more functional in our ability to improve our self-reliance, at least starting from the foundational level. And this opens up a lot of new opportunities, not just with the United States, who is our sole treaty ally, but other like-minded partners as well. So I believe that there is a recognition in Washington regarding that. But if I could just quickly add, China also recognizes this, and this is why it was since the election period, China had already been increasing its maritime presence across the first island chain, Taiwan, Japan, and the Philippines, for instance, to ensure that it may have leverage over its negotiations with Trump. But on the other hand, you had Secretary of State Rubio state that the future of U.S.-China relations in the Western Pacific, at least, will depend on how well China would respect the sovereignty and sovereign rights of the Philippines. So it is up to us as well to bring this on the table.
Yeah. Except U.S. Vice President J.D. Vance just gave a speech at the Munich Security Conference saying that actually Russia and China are not the enemy, but your enemies are within yourselves. He was talking to the European countries, pointing to free speech and migration as the biggest issues. These are the same themes that they campaigned on. So I hear what you're saying about Trump 1.0 and his focus on the Indo-Pacific strategy, but the difference this time is he's surrounded by J.D. Vance, he's surrounded by Elon Musk, who have vastly differing views.
Exactly.
This is not something you're worried about?
Oh, yeah. Go ahead.
Yeah, go ahead.
Yeah, J.D. Vance, exactly. He was one of the restrainers that I was talking about, to relocate U.S. military posturing away from Europe, away from the Middle East. But he did not really say much when it comes to U.S. interests in the Indo-Pacific, but rather there are several opportunities, and we've seen this when he was in Paris, for instance, just a few weeks back, and he gave a lot of discussions on U.S. interests as well. In the Indo-Pacific. Also, when he met the Indian Prime Minister Narendra Modi when he was there, there was a lot of positive statements coming from J.D. Vance. But yes, J.D. Vance has been quite skeptical about continuously racking up U.S. Support in Europe and in the Middle East, for that matter.
So you're not
so
worried.
Yes, I agree in that.
So you're not
regard.
worried that this may also carry over to the Indo-Pacific, of which we are a part.
I think the stakes in the Indo-Pacific are too high for the United States to sort of turn its back on against. I mean, this is where the challenge is, and the challenge is likely to pursue in the next few decades as well. And for us in the Philippines, the main objective is to prepare. And I think that there is also that resonance in Japan. And even in Australia and other like-minded countries. So I do not think that the U.S. would be sort of bold enough to turn its back on the Indo-Pacific, especially at this point in time. And in fact, they had a quad discussion among the foreign ministers as one of the first major engagements of the State Department, and that's quite telling. Regarding where the Indo-Pacific fits in Trump's overarching scheme of things. But then again, we are speculating, we are assuming based on what is currently taking place. And this opens up room for discussion in the long run.
Don, when you look, though, a bit more micro in the ASEAN region, pretty much I think we're the only ones who kind of see differently. Everyone is friendly with China, quote-unquote, although in Munich, the Singaporean defense minister did note the increased patrols around the South China Sea, etc. China's always been a proponent of Asians handling their own tensions, their own conflicts. Is it what do you make of it all, right? There's America now looking inward, and we might be left with our immediate neighbors. And then where would we stand? Do you find us lacking in this regard when it comes to cohesiveness with our ASEAN neighbors?
Well, there is this thing called the Global Security Initiative that China promulgated a few years ago, and it was in full force when he visited the Middle East, and that was exactly what you were saying: leave the Asian problems for the Asian countries, and this is more of an exclusionary policy to get the Europeans, the North Americans, the U.S. out of the region, and to ensure that everything is bilateral, meaning giving China the clear upper hand given the asymmetries in power relations. But then again, if we're talking about, for instance, the U.S. looking inward and where does this leave us? Well, for one, I do not think the U.S. would be a complete isolationist. There may be selective areas in which it may or may not engage in when it comes to the Asian continent. So, for instance, like the ASEAN summits, etc., we won't expect much of U.S. involvement there compared to the Biden or the Obama administration. But when it comes to realpolitik, we have to remember that it was, in fact, under Trump 1.0 when they sent U.S. aircraft carriers to Vietnam for freedom of navigation, the first time since the Vietnam War. And this is also telling in terms of working with particular countries that also are able to help that position as well. Now, when it comes to the Philippines, I believe that we're keeping that open dialogue mechanism with our immediate neighbors, even with Vietnam. However, we also understand the limitations of working with ASEAN states, but we also have countries like Japan, countries like Australia, countries like India. France is an Indo-Pacific power in its own geographical position. So what I feel is that we have to continue this multi-aligned approach.
Yeah. Certainly. We're going to have to leave that there for now. We've run out of time, but we'll take this up with you another time. Thank you so much for your insights, geopolitical analyst Don McLean-Gill.
All right, it's time to pause for another quick break, but right after that, the number of dengue cases continues to rise, prompting Quezon City to declare an outbreak. That and more stories up next. Keep it here. Welcome back. Thanks for staying with us here on The Big Story.
After Quezon City, the Department of Health says 8 more local government units may declare a dengue outbreak. These areas are located in Calabarzon, Central Luzon, and the National Capital Region. As of February 1, the DOH has reported over 28,300 cases. That's a 40% increase compared to last year. In Quezon City alone, the first to flag the outbreak, at least 10 people have died due to the viral infection. Most dengue cases in QC involve minors. Health officials are attributing the uptick in cases to stagnant water from rains brought by the shear line, which serve as breeding ground for mosquitoes. The DOH is now urging everyone to use insect repellent, wear appropriate clothing, eliminate potential mosquito habitats, and seek medical help at once at the onset of symptoms. Dengue symptoms include high fever of up to 40 degrees Celsius, headache, muscle and joint pains, rashes, and nausea.
Ang pagdeklara ng isang outbreak ay hindi nangangahulugan ng sakuna. Ibig sabihin nito ay tumaas ang bilang lampas sa pangkaraniwang inaasahan sa isang bahagi ng taon. Wala pong gamot laban sa dengue, ngunit ang mga simptomas tulad ng panghihina at tulad ng lagnat ay nabibigyan ng lunas sa tamang paraan sa ospital kung kinakailangan. Pwede nating maiwasan ang pagkamatay basta tayo'y sumangguni ng maaga.
Meanwhile, the driver's license of Angkas CEO George Royeca has been suspended for 90 days by the Land Transportation Office starting February 2. That's the same day a video went viral online showing Angkas riders obstructing traffic flow at an intersection in Cainta, Rizal. The very long convoy was reportedly on its way to Marilake Highway in support of hashtag Make Marilake Safe Again. Royeca admitted to leading that motorcade. Now, a day after the incident, Royeca issued a public apology on his social media page and personally went to LTO for the first hearing of his case. And in a Facebook update today, February 17, Royeca shared that he has surrendered his license to the LTO and announced that he is now a certified Angkas. On the official page of Angkas, one post reads, "Congrats George, promoted ka na to passenger." But the LTO clarified that there is still no final decision on Royeca's case and that his license's suspension is just preventive.
And for our big picture tonight, Olympian and champion pole vaulter EJ Obiena is on a roll. He just won gold at the Orlen Copernicus Cup in Torun, Poland for a season-best record in the 5.80-meter jump. The world number 4 defeated 9 others in this indoor tournament. A phenomenal bounce back from his ISTAF indoor tourney performance in Dusseldorf, Germany. This is EJ's second gold medal this season after finishing first place at the Meeting Metz Model Athletor in France for the 5.7-meter jump. Truly back in his winning form, a big congratulations to EJ Obiena.
It's nice to see EJ back in action.
And on a roll.
Yeah. As we remember, in the Olympics, he fell short of a podium finish, a medal, because of a back injury. Apparently, he had a stress fracture on his spine.
Yes, yeah,
Why do you have to bring up such painful memories for EJ?
Because it's okay, because he already
Because now he's won gold and silver now. So it's okay.
I guess he has a packed season coming up, and maybe the 6-meter jump is in the cards.
You know who will know? The people of Play-by-Play.
Yes. That's right. That's it for the big story tonight.
So
the people of Play-by-Play are already there.
We are One News All Sides all the time.
Thanks for tuning in. Have a good night.